Hello, it's Graham Brown and Eric Tenhaver. Welcome back to our Lazy Money Machine podcast. Eric, how you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thanks, Graham.
So back at it this week. We got more audio clips to share.
Yeah, definitely we have.
Let's dive straight in. First one. Cue it up, Eric.
Okay, so this is one that Graham found. So let's go and listen to what we found on the internet this week.
Like what I do and what I've done, the most important thing that I've ever done is surround myself with people that I love. Like I have a really good group of friends and interesting people, and that leads to more. Like they find more interesting people. It branches out and spreads out, and then people listening to this, they become like-minded. They pursue their happiness. They pursue their actual desires. What interests them? Like what they would like to do for their career, for their life, for their craft. Like what do you enjoy? Like find that thing. Surround yourself with like-minded people. And I think we all get fuel from the people that we're around. And it's one of the most underrated aspects of being a person in a community is if you're around a bunch of ambitious people who are creative, who are open-minded and honest, you are inspired by that and you seek to have like-minded.
There's a bit of a clip off at the end, but Joe Rogan.
Yeah, that was Joe Rogan. Apologies, that was my editing at the end.
That's right. We got the message of Joe.
That was Joe Rogan. He was speaking to Russell Brand on the Joe Rogan podcast. Do you ever listen to that?
Yeah, it's a fantastic podcast. The only thing is it's very long. The episodes are an hour or 2 hours long, but
3 hours.
Yeah. So I wish somebody would go and do the edit and make like a 10-minute version of the highlights. That would be really cool. Joe, if you're listening, please get somebody to make this because we want it.
I'm sure you're not the first person to ask for it. Hey, the thing is about that podcast. He was saying that, why do they do 2 or 3 hour podcasts? And he said, well, it's like a conversation. It's just a conversation between me and the guest in the show. And he said, somebody was saying to him, he said, people don't have 2 or 3 hour conversations in daily life, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the interesting thing about it is that, what they talk about in that podcast is they just go really deep into subjects which we don't have time to talk about, but are subjects that are important.
Yes. And I really enjoy him, and I think he's a great interviewer, and he doesn't take any crap from his guests, so he's really into diving in and finding out, so that's really good. But yeah, it is long. It's very long, and I think as an interviewer, I think you always have to think through as well what the listener wants, right? So 2 hours of recording could be good for you, but it might not be so good for the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I have on occasion listened to a whole 2 or 3 hour show that was so gripping that I just got into it. But generally, like the last one, I'd only listen to like an hour of it max. But it's interesting. I mean, they talk around everything that's kind of relevant. And his background, he's a mixed martial artist fighter, right?
Yes.
And so he that's his style. And I think it's kind of unapologetic as well, which is pretty cool. Because then they can talk about stuff which isn't edited. And it's just interesting, this subject they're talking about, who you hang around with.
Right.
How important that is. And it's something that we don't really consider, is it? We don't really think about how the people we hang around with impacts us.
Yes.
Can you imagine if you hung around with people who are negative or unambitious in a way?
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, I have. And I find myself being very selective on how much time I also spend with people. If I'm in a group and I can't avoid it, if the group doesn't inspire me, I tend to leave early. Sort of had this last night again, where I was in an event where I thought, okay, I've spent enough time here. I don't think I'm in the right place at the moment. So.
But isn't that interesting? You've made a conscious decision about that, and you've had to, in a way, piss people off. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think people are scared of doing, isn't it? Because, if you hang around with some people and you don't feel that they're good for you or they're not contributing to, your outlook, then at some point you have to turn around and say, okay, right, I'm leaving. Mm-hmm. Whether that means like leaving an event like you were last night or like on a more sort of substantial basis, actually breaking friendship with them and just not hanging out with them anymore.
Yeah. What I also notice is it's hard for me to be in a long-term relationship with friends that really stay in a job and really keep defending the reasoning why they do that. And it's not because I don't like them. I mean, I love a lot of these friends that I have, but I tend to gravitate now towards people that are a bit more entrepreneurial because I have something to share with them if I talk about work. And if I have to talk about, the boss and the department and the colleagues, and I tend to tune out pretty quickly.
You have to, though. That's the way you end up protecting yourself, right? I mean, I think this is such an important subject because it's so unexamined in the sense that, it's such an influence on us, but we don't give it any kind of credit. We just kind of think, these are just people I hang around with. I have my own opinions, but you end up editing yourself. And, because we're social beings, we want to be part of the group. We end up, if you have an outlying thought or an outlying idea, you end up editing that, right? Subconsciously to fit in with people. And that's the danger, isn't it? And it's particular, like you talk about, if you hang around with people like that who don't get it, that's the danger, isn't it? Because in time, you won't get it either.
Yes. And maybe on the flip side, it's interesting to talk about that. So, if it's probably easy to identify the people you might not want to hang around with, but how do you deal with, let's say, if you want to achieve something, how do you find the people that can help you get there?
Right. Yeah, you have to make some kind of commitment, don't you? I mean, like for me, one of my goals was to complete the Ironman triathlon in Lanzarote, or just complete the Ironman triathlon anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
So to do that, you've got to surround yourself with people who are up for it. Otherwise, if you surround yourself with people who are out boozing until 2 a.m, you ain't going to do it because that's going to rub off on you. You want to go and train, but these people say, "Oh, God, just come out for a drink,"
So how do you find them then?
So therefore, you have to make the commitment. And one of my commitments was to actually move to the Canary Islands where the race takes place, right? And that was a massive commitment because I knew if I moved there, I would be on an island with people who were up for it. I would be on an island with elite athletes, with professionals, with coaches. I'd be surrounded by these people. So that was the commit. That was the way. You've got to go out these people. I mean, you don't necessarily have to move to some remote island. You could start a group. You could start a meetup. You could go to events. You could get yourself involved in these groups. And I think that's really important because nothing changes until you do.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, thinking back at what I've done is, I think for when I started my property business in the UK, I actively started to find a network of people that could for initially train me, but afterwards like a support network, right? Where I could go back for advice, or I could check what others were doing. I had a mentor in the UK. So if you want to go after something new, like either you doing the Ironman or me, going to do my property investment in the UK, it's good to find the people that can help you get there, I think, as well as looking at, okay, who do you hang around with now that is holding you back? So it's a balance, I think, right? Finding some inspiring people that can pull you up or pull you forward or bring you forward, and, maybe softly and gently spend less time with the people that tend to hold you back.
Did you find that changed you in any way? Did you find that hanging around with those people had an impact on what you thought about what you were doing?
Yeah, the big change for me is the realization about what's possible. So
that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, initially when I started, I thought, what, a multi-million-dollar portfolio of rentals? I mean, that seemed to be like a really, really scary big goal. But if you hang around with people that have been in this business for, 10 years or something, they do this on a Saturday afternoon, and they do a deal, and they, for them, doing things that are scary for me are common practice really helps. So if you meet somebody that where buying a property, refurbishing it, renting it out is like business as usual, while for me it's a scary thing, that really helps when there are people where that consider this normal. So it must be doable.
Yeah, that's profound, isn't it? That whole thing about expectations. in a sense that, like you said, you know, you thought that was such a big, scary thing, but then if you hang around with those people, it's just kind of normal, right? And it's the same. I mean, that's applicable to like with me and Iron Man. You know, when I did my first half Iron Man, which is only, quote unquote, a 6 or 7 hour race. You know, I thought that was like the biggest thing ever. And then, you know, you start hanging around with people who do Iron Man, and then, you know, these people have done like not just one, but they've done 15. And they've done, you know, they've qualified for Ironman World Championships in Hawaii. And, you know, these guys maybe, you know, I trained with a guy who was in his mid-50s who had done, you know, again, about 15 Ironmans and had been part of the World Championships. So your expectations change. So that whole idea about, oh, I can't do this because I'm too old. When you look at this guy who's 10 years older than you and achieved significantly more or gunning for bigger goals, it completely changes your expectations, and for the better. And you can see also how that can change your expectations for the worse, right? If you hang around with the opposite of that.
Yes. Yeah. Very good topic. And I think a very good lesson learned, which we both, I think, apply, which is great. And the people you hang around with and Joe Rogan's view on that. I think it's an interesting topic for this podcast. Hang around for the next one.